not even letting me refresh. I'm just going to assume we're live.
There we go. We are live.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Storytime Network. Today is, of course, the Paradox Hour podcast, and today, to kick off our Pride Month lineup, we are discussing LGBTQIA plus tropes in media. I'm, of course, your resident sleep-deprived Brit Mill, and today I am joined by Jack.
Hello, I am getting off of a very stressful week, and I am glad to finally have some time to just talk on this podcast.
Aerith.
Hi, I am Aerith, and I need to do more of these kinds of things.
And Logstar.
Logan.
So, just to kick off, LGBTQIA+, which is probably the last time I'm going to say the full acronym, just because it's very unwieldy.
It's a mouthful. Mouthful alphabet soup.
Yeah.
It's definitely a mouthful, but I gotta say, when I'm using it in like writing and everything, I really prefer to spell the full thing out because I feel like QIA people often get devalued.
Oh no, absolutely, and that is definitely why when I was putting the title and the background together, I wanted to make sure that was front and center.
But when you're speaking, yeah, it's a mouthful.
When we're speaking, I think we can get away with the very least LGBT plus, if not, yeah.
Yeah, just know that if we leave off the extra letters, we really mean those inclusive every time.
Yeah, we need to see things that are near anagrams for those letters so we can use that instead.
Mm-hmm.
There are no acronyms or anagrams I can think of that could use those properly.
Yeah, I mean close enough. Close enough. That's the point. You're not going to get it with that Q, right?
So LGBTQIA
is good.
I mean, when we talk about acronyms, all I can ever think of is the one from Phineas and Ferb of ALCA, Organization Without a Cool Acronym.
That's great.
But
speaking of recent Western cartoons...
Oh, we were just discussing this beforehand. Oh boy, have Western cartoons not handled transgender people well.
Especially adult ones like South Park and
South Park's its own thing, it's like, does South Park treat anything well?
In fairness,
South Park's by its nature, South Park is considered irreverent.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean it's okay.
It could do with being a little reverent on some things, though.
Yeah, it's one thing when you're poking fun at large, large scope encompassing things like Christianity or subsects of Christianity. But when you're targeting already targeted demographics,
again, it brings me back to James A. Caster's the 2-minute video he did, or the 2-minute bit in one of his specials he did on transgender people, where he very specifically said, yes, because who haven't faced a challenge? The trans community. And it really does just like, look, yeah, you want to make fun of everyone equally, but we don't have equality yet. Save the equalness for when we have equality. Until then, go after
brave little cis lad.
Brave little cis boy is great.
Also,
is a great quote.
Anytime I hear a cis person say that transgender people don't have anything hard, that is such a scream of gender privilege to me.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's so fucking bad.
Because it's like, our entire lives are trial and struggle. That's the very nature of being what transgender is.
Yep.
But yeah,
I mean, that can be applied to a lot of the LGBT plus spectrum.
Oh, absolutely. But there is a degree of acceptance that has emerged in the last 10, 15 years for many aspects of the LGBT community that some are still struggling to get.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, there are organizations like, and this is the last time I intend on mentioning them this stream, the LGBT Alliance, who make it their job to exclude trans people from anything to do with LGBT.
So kind of like Turfs, except a different.
The LGBT community was started by Turfs. Yes.
Which is weird because I'm pretty sure one of the big moments of the gay rights movement in Stonewall was started by trans women.
Yes, actually, 2 trans women. I was just reading an article about it today. 2 trans women were the ones that threw the bricks at the police that kicked off the riots.
Awesome.
I mean,
Good for them.
And I'm glad that we are starting with transgenderism because, as you said, there has been an element of acceptance for lesbians, for homosexuals, and for bisexuals that just hasn't happened for transgender people yet, and which is
not to the same degree.
Just
well,
it's
I mean,
changing, but it's not to the same degree yet.
And yeah, I've heard people put it in terms of like the time lag in acceptance is like a solid 30 years.
Oof.
Yeah, and it's like you have shows out there that are like what's the lesbian show? Shit.
Gonna have to be a bit more specific now.
No, there's a show that's specifically about lesbians and lesbian life, and that's it. But and they have one transgender character in there, and even then, it's a bit problematic in a lot of areas.
There have been a few shows,
it's like
in recent memory that have had a good trans rep that I can think of.
Sense-It had pretty good trans representation in it.
I've heard that. I haven't watched that show.
The show makes me really uncomfortable because it devolves very quickly into sexual like stuff, and being on the ace spectrum, it makes me very uncomfortable. So I haven't seen the full show, but it started off with a pretty good premise. And one of the main characters is a trans woman, so
that's really cool.
Yeah,
we've seen a lot of good trans rep in recent media. I think She-Ra had a really interesting non-binary character. Zombieland Saga had a really good trans girl who was used as. Why don't you explain the story, Mill?
Okay, basically, I'm fairly sure it was a Conservative politician in British Parliament got on a soapbox about TERFs being treated badly, which they should, and brought out a printout of a picture of Lily from Zombieland Saga holding a photoshopped gun with the caption, "Shut the fuck up, TERF." And, pretty much, a lot of people that saw it went, I don't see any issue with that picture.
Oh, for those who are not familiar with what TERFs are, it means trans exclusionary radical feminists. And TERFs are assholes, and that is all that needs to be said on the matter.
What I think is really funny about TERFs is most of the time they are totally okay with trans men.
Yeah, no, that's weird. Like they're okay with that's a fucking double.
Well, I wouldn't say that was even a double standard. That's more you're gonna leave our club, get out. It's more like enthusiastically throwing them out.
It's like, but like they don't like even in the L word, like I brought up earlier, their transgender character in that is a trans man. And there's a lot of problematic elements in it, but they at least try to show what that journey is like for a trans man. And yet trans women are completely left out of the picture.
Yeah.
And it's something that really frustrates me as a transgender lesbian person.
Yeah.
we still have a long way to go in society, and I am not saying that trans men have it any better than trans women, because they don't. They have it just as hard as we do.
But certainly in the past sort of, I would say, year or two, since, let's be real, Arch Turf J.K. Rowling started being open. Certainly Rowling's diatribes have been aimed at trans women more often than not.
That's like
of Rowling.
Rowling's a whole bucket of worms.
I was actually going to use this as a transition into an actual LGBT trope I like, and that's the supernaturally validated trans person.
That is one of my favorite tropes, actually.
It's really a neat trope where it's just like, yeah, this person is trans, and the magic of the world acknowledges that this person's preferred gender, this person's actual gender. And I just think it's neat.
Absolutely. And it's nice to have that, even if it's not in the real world. It's nice to have people conscientious enough of it to validate it.
It's like there's this one comic where it's a warlock tracks down a person and tries to go the whole I know your true name thing with the birth certificate, but since it's their dead name, it doesn't work.
That's awesome.
Yeah, points for whoever came up with that.
I'm just going through the examples of that trope. Apparently, it was supposed to be done in The Matrix, which I think it's pretty much dead on that it was meant to be not even meant to be, is a trans allegory.
Well, considering the people who made The Matrix are themselves trans women.
Yeah.
And have come out and said that, it's the entire movie is a metaphor for the trans experience. I mean,
and yet
it's definitely there. It is definitely there.
And yet you'll still get people who try and deny it. But apparently, again, I mean, this is going off what somebody has written on TV Tropes, so I'm not obviously 100% certain. But the character Switch in the first film was originally planned to appear as a man in the real world, but a woman in the Matrix. Obviously.
Yeah. I think I remember reading the reason for that was because they didn't feel like society at the time would tolerate that.
I mean, it would be 50-50 if society nowadays tolerated something like that, which is unfortunate. But especially back in, early 2000s, yeah.
And another example is Stormlight, actually. The Radiance can actually basically change basically once someone becomes a Radiant, if they are transgender, the magic basically starts changing their body to their actual gender instead of their at birth assigned at birth sex.
And what's really interesting about that, and Stormlight, I have mixed feeling on how Stormlight handles this, partly because of Brandon's announcement, because he's come out and announced that, this is exactly what happens. And it's been depicted on screen in a book that that's what happens. But, it's really interesting because the magic in the Stormlight Archive healing operates on restoring you to what you believe yourself to be, or what your psyche believes your whole self to be. And so that's a really interesting element of it. However, the fact that Brandon has come out and said, I feel like there would be an overwhelming abundance of transgender people in the Knights Radiant because of their personal stories, and we have exactly one depicted, bothers me a lot.
Yeah. No, I can definitely see that.
I do wish he was a bit better with representation. I am glad that he has confirmed that Yasna is ace and that Renarin is gay, though.
Oh, I didn't see that he actually confirmed Renarin was gay.
Yeah, he confirmed
That's
it.
cool. That's cool. Good for him.
Yes.
You know, but it's one of those things where it's like, I kind of wish he'd lean into things a little bit more if he's going to come out and say them.
Mm.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I wish he would, but at the same time, like,
I also understand.
I do understand. At least in Renarin's case, it's partially because he hasn't gotten a lot of focus yet, anyways.
So, well, Renarin's supposedly a very important back 5 character, so.
So we'll get more on him later.
Yep.
But anyways, going back to trans rep, let's talk about how not to do that.
Oh boy. Okay.
This is going to be a long one.
Yeah. Any show with Seth MacFarlane, any show with Seth MacFarlane in its production is probably going to have dealt with it horribly.
Or Joss Whedon, for that matter, if it's even in there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, fuck Joss Whedon now, because we now know that he is a catastrophically awful person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
God damn it. Why did he have to be such a dick?
Yeah. So in terms of Seth MacFarlane bungling it, so
every show
yeah, Family Guy, Quagmire's father Dan undergoes surgery to become Ida. It was, not treated well. Lots of, stereotypical jokes, including an unsettling gender reveal.
That's one of my least favorite tropes.
Just acting very stereotypical. Seth MacFarlane then made it worse by saying that he thought the character was probably the most sympathetic portrayal of a transsexual character that has ever been on television.
Okay. Okay, so the fact that he used the term transsexual there tells you how out of clue he is.
Yeah. The Cleveland show was even worse.
Because for the most part, transgender people are not overly fond of the term transsexual.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Because it conflates sex and gender, which are different.
Yeah. So basically, from what I've heard, it is used as a term by like substantially older members of the community who are more familiar with that terminology than the more modern terminology. But outside of that, I believe it's not really accepted by the larger community.
Pretty much, yeah. It's pretty much a where we've come from kind of thing.
Mm.
But yeah, amongst pretty much most of the modern population of the transgender community, it's not a term that's well liked.
I figured as much. So that makes sense.
And Markablu, I don't expect Seth MacFarlane's show to be nuanced and not stereotypical, but I do expect media to be the slight bit respectful if you're including something like this.
The bare minimum nice.
But yeah, Cleveland's show even worse, because it had an episode that had a character called Auntie Mama, who was originally Uncle Kevin, and was...
What?
And she was portrayed as somebody who manipulates straight men into loving her and being called a guy pretending to be a woman. Yeah.
The fuck?
That is one of the most problematic conservative ideas out there.
Mm-hmm.
This idea that trans women are just men who want to trap gay men who want to trap other men. It's like, yeah, a lot of trans women are into men. Yes, that makes them straight.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a lot of us that, just like, cis people, we're not into men.
Mm-hmm.
Or there are bisexual trans women out there. And it's like, I think it stems from the cross-dressing community is a large part of that, because a lot of cross-dressers, a lot of trans people start as cross-dressers before realizing they're transgender.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also people who cross-dress as fetishes and stuff like that. And I mean, no criticism of those people, but I think that's kind of where it stems from.
Yeah, a lot of people don't really understand the difference between the two.
But it also just stems from straight cis men's fears that
absolutely,
that this will happen to them when, it almost certainly won't. Like, 99% of trans women who are attracted to men, are not doing this to trap men and then, throw the reveal out there just like, and, maliciously. And just to be clear,
incidentally, this is why the term trap is considered an anti-trans slur.
I was about to mention that we will not be using that term
from henceforth beyond
at
the
all.
explanation.
But
I'm
it
sorry
also
about that.
It's okay. It also stems from you have shows like the Jerry Springer Show and things like that that would use trans women as like a wow, what's the phrase? Like a clickbait kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or it's like, it was for gags and for laughs and whatnot, and that's I think where some of it stems from as well, which is obviously problematic, but
to get away from Seth MacFarlane on the bad side, it's also not done well in Futurama, which is one of Futurama's few faults, I would say. The whole Ben-Hur episode is pretty awful in hindsight, and is just full of stereotypical nonsense. Simpsons, I just don't think there's much trans rep in there from what I remember.
There's more gay and lesbian rep in the Simpsons. My knowledge.
Obviously, we have mentioned South Park. All I really have to say is Mr. Garrison, and I think that will pretty much explain everything.
All of South Park's LGBT plus rep basically in one character.
Yeah.
Which is not great.
Mm-hmm.
It's not handled great. Like, no, I'm not going to elaborate. I don't need to.
Yeah. With the whole thing earlier with cross-dressing, transgender, and just how everything's conflated. There's one thing I'm reading right now. Now, I always picture, like, with representation, this goes into the whole, cross-dresser / trans, whatever the guy's going for. With the feather boa and a drug habit, there are like 1 million characters like that. It's like, oh. And that whole thing?
Yeah.
Now, I'd say that's probably my least favorite thing. Seems like that's the stock character, like one of the stock characters like the 90s and such. Luckily, that one seems to be going elsewhere.
Yeah, a lot of 90s shit has fallen by the wayside, fortunately.
Yeah, this one book was from the 90s, and I'm like, oh yeah, uh-huh, mm-hmm. Great until now. Well, no, except for other very 90s things.
Well, I mean, going to, the stereotypical portrayal of gay men and lesbians. So gay men is obviously camp gay, and lesbians are generally butch lesbians. And yeah, they're incredibly stereotypical and frankly inaccurate.
Mm-hmm. Like, I have seen and met both lesbians and gay men who are not stereotypical in that way whatsoever. Like, they outright tell me that they are gay or lesbian. I'm like, I would not have figured that. Good to know. Yeah. Thank you.
A lot of LGBT people tend to be pretty open about what they are. Just because we don't want people assuming things about us,
Yeah.
I mean, you know what they say about assuming?
Makes it ass out of you and Ming. Which, people need to stop being mean to Ming. He did nothing to deserve this.
Poor Ming.
But just going back to transgender rep again, we were discussing this before the stream started. There's actually a surprising amount of good transgender rep in anime and manga, which, considering how unprogressive, let's say, Japan is, it really is a surprise. I mean, we've already mentioned Lily from Zombieland Saga. There's Venus from Heaven's Design Team, who you will have heard us mention if you listen to our anime streams.
There's also there are a few examples from One Piece. A lot of them are from more recent arcs, but one of them, Mr. Two, is I believe would the term be genderqueer or gender fluid?
I think
Mr. Two.
I think gender fluid would probably apply, because they really do.
Genderqueer is like your kind of like undefined category. The like I'm not really sure what I am, so I'm just queer. And gender fluid tends to be more of like a revolving door kind of thing. Sometimes I'm more masculine, sometimes I'm more feminine, sometimes I'm less of both, you know.
That be Bon Clay, yeah.
It seems to be much more Bon Clay, yeah.
So
Bon Clay is also interesting in that they're an example of a character who is presented or designed fairly stereotypically, but characterized really well. Which is an unfortunately common occurrence in anime and manga.
I think anime and manga is coming a long way, but there's still a lot of, I think, really problematic things. It's like when you said that, you know, one thing that has a lot of really good portrayal, whatever. I just, you know, you said that, and then my mind sprung to my what sprung to my mind was the entire category of gender bender. Which is largely not.
Oh no.
So
there is
gender benders are not true rep.
No.
And but the thing is like a lot of people, I think, use gender bender as like an explanation or their guiding post. It's like when I was younger, I loved gender bender stuff. But that was also because it was like, I think it was a subconscious thing on my part. And now that I'm older and more experienced, I really don't like it for a lot of reasons. So
it is most definitely not a good trope and not a good category of media.
So I mean, I think
stuff has not aged well.
And just to inform you that it's still around, unfortunately, that sort of stuff. I mean,
that doesn't surprise me in the slightest.
What was that one manga in? That was the one I was about to mention, Ayakashi Triangle, that literally only stopped, got about 50 chapters in Weekly Shonen Jump no less than a year ago.
I think it's still ongoing, isn't it?
No, it got cancelled. It got axed, thankfully. But the fact that it got to 50 chapters is not good.
Yeah. The weirdest thing, too, is that it could have potentially been a good exploration of sexuality from the female lead who was confused by her attraction to her boyfriend who had been gender bent.
Oh, is Ayakashi Triangle? Oh, no, the one I was meaning was Eight Gravity Boys. That's the one that's been been axed. And that one is rather bad, yes. Ayakashi Triangle is still ongoing. And yeah, it's not great.
Yeah. It has its issues.
So, just gonna bring one up. I haven't watched this one, but I understand it's a good one. Sure, two of you probably have Horo Musuko, Wandering Sun.
I've heard of that one. I have not read or watched that one yet, but I've heard very good things about it.
I was thinking you probably had it all.
2002. Wow. Okay. Good for it.
Diggity damn.
Good for it. Because again, that's the other thing. A lot of these series that you'll see are probably. I mean, we were talking about One Piece's representation. It took a while to get some actually good trans representation for One Piece. The Okama are not great.
Yeah, no. The current good trans rep was introduced in the current ongoing arc, which has been ongoing for like 2.5 years, but still.
So yeah, I mean, good for Oda for learning from his mistakes.
And I appreciate that a lot of these artists are learning and progressing, and they're not just like clinging to their old ways. I do appreciate that people are trying, and they are trying to be more sensitive about things on a general basis.
Yeah, what's that one quote? He doesn't know what he's doing, but he's got spirit, or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like there are different levels for representation. 1 is wanting to represent, 2 is when you actually want to do a good job, and 3 is when you finally know how to do a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, just on the, again, good representation side for transgender people in anime, Aluka Zoldyck in Hunter x Hunter is good representation, I would say. Where she is very much transgender girl, and it's very clear that it's very clear the split between the characters of the villains don't respect that, but the heroes do.
That's good.
Yeah, that's always interesting.
And again, it's
good way to show how good or bad a character is.
You want to really show that this person is evil? Make them kick a puppy. In this case, just belittle transgender people that,
Yeah, a very good way to show
when
it's villainous is to have them be a bigot.
Do you hear that, conservative Republicans?
Yeah, I've got to be honest. In a short story I've been writing for the last few months, that is sort of an easy way I used to get across that a particular character was not a good person. It is an easy way to just, show that they are just a dick.
Shorthand. Very good shorthand.
But the final one that I wanted to mention, and just in general this show, Stars Align, which got completely shafted by its studio, but the character You was revealed to be gay in, I think, the first or second episode, and all of the main characters were, on board and defending them. And the reason I say them is because later on they were also revealed that they think they're non-binary, but basically they just weren't sure how they should be categorized. There is another character in that show who is a trans man who again is treated as respectfully as possible, and it really is just so nice to see shows like this exist.
Absolutely.
And it's just a shame that there are not more shows like it that can do as good a job. But obviously there are other letters in the acronym. I mean, the one that I wanted to bring up, because again, I've got at least a little bit of experience with series that portray it, is Asexuals and Aromantics.
That's one I find is rarely portrayed in media very well.
It is very rarely portrayed, and that's the reason again I wanted to bring it up, because it's another one that doesn't get mentioned enough when you were talking about LGBTQ stuff.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of people seem to forget that asexuality is a spectrum. It's not just a thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, it ranges from. I know there are some asexuals who are completely aromantic, but others who are have specific romantic preferences or who are like that.
Right. So there's asexual and there's aromantic. They're actually two separate things.
Asexual is on the sexuality side. It means, well, at the very sort of
what
highest
you're attracted
level,
to.
yeah, the very highest level, you do not want a sexual relationship with anyone. Aromantic is you do not want a romantic relationship with anyone.
Well, and that's actually a dangerous way to put it, because especially in the asexual community, there's seems to be three terminologies. There's sex positive, sex repulsed, and then sex neutral. So you have.
Would you like to? Yeah.
Right. So you have asexuals that are sex positive, just don't experience sexual attraction, but they're okay engaging in sexual interactions with people that they care about, or even that they don't. They don't feel the attraction. That's really kind of what makes you an asexual, is that you don't feel the attraction.
Yes.
But then there's also sex repulsed, who it would be more in line with Mill's, extreme definition of asexual, is that they not only don't feel the attraction, but they don't want anything to do with any kind of sexual contact. So.
I assume neutral is in between the two.
And neutral is you're just kind of indifferent about it. So.
No, I'm fully okay with being corrected on any of this stuff, because.
Yeah, no, it's always important to learn about these kinds of things, especially if you're unfamiliar. Like me.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like, because, before I came across all of this, generally when I came across ace, I just put, like, aro, just right on the end, just not even thinking about it. Like, oh, that's what it is? Like, oh, no, it's not, huh? I mean, that's totally new to me. Well, not totally new, pretty recent.
Again, Marker Blue, asexuality is very much a spectrum. So there are some asexuals that have
correct me if I'm wrong.
Have no sexual drive whatsoever and won't even masturbate, but there will be some who do. It's very much a spectrum, and it's.
Well, and it's like the asexual spectrum also encompasses gray sexuals and demisexuals.
Demisexual, correct me if I'm wrong, is someone who only really is sexually attracted to people whom they have strong emotional connections with, right?
Exactly,
yes.
Yeah. And then gray sexuals are people that just, they feel sexual some of the time, but not all the time. And it's a very much a sliding scale for where you're at on there. Like, I'm demisexual. The one of the weirdest things to me is when people look at movie actresses or actors and they're like, "Oh man, that person's so hot." I don't get it. I've only ever been attracted. I can say I've only ever been attracted to two people in my entire life.
Yeah.
So.
And the other thing is that, it isn't a set thing. It can and possibly will change over time.
And I tend to err more towards the, I'm more sex neutral and on the like more asexual side of being demisexual. But it's like, for us, it's like there's a switch.
Yeah.
And so most of the time we're functionally completely asexual, and then the switch gets flipped, and then we're allosexual. It's a weird experience.
Yeah, this terminology is definitely takes a lot of learning to understand all of it, but it is important to learn about it. I think.
And one of the worst things, for those of you listening that aren't super familiar with some of these things, one of the worst things you can do is tell someone who uses these labels and be like, "Oh, so you're normal then?"
Mm.
No.
Ooh,
Mm.
yeah,
No.
that's not a working.
Because we don't have these labels to describe to just be special or whatever. We
Yeah.
have them because they describe something that makes us not the same.
Mm.
So
Yeah. But in terms of asexual and aromantic representation in media, the one that always sticks out in my mind is Marky in Bloom Into You, which we will be discussing at length, I believe, next week.
Correct. I believe next Saturday.
Mm-hmm. But he flat out says that he has never felt any sort of attraction towards anyone and finds the idea of being in a romantic relationship unappealing. And again, he's treated respectfully, and I know I keep saying that, but like it's some magical thing, but you'd be surprised.
it is a magical thing.
It is a magical thing.
And that's what's sad.
Yeah. There's just so many shows that don't say it outright in the show. I mean, this is something that we were probably going to mention at some point, but so many LGBTQ plus characters show no sign of it in the actual form of media, and it's only via word of God, either during or afterwards, that it actually becomes apparent that they are, gay, lesbian, transgender, whatever. Yeah, Rowling is another horrific example of that, because hey, you don't just get to say Dumbledore is gay and then never show any of it, especially when you're making a prequel where he would have full opportunity to actually show any indication that he's gay, given that he is going up against what I'm fairly sure is confirmed to be his former lover in Grindelwald. But then you say, oh no, nothing's going to happen in the movie. Then...
Yeah, because they have to market it to China, Mill.
God. Oh, we were discussing this in Discord earlier. This the companies who choose not to include LGBTQ plus stuff in their shows, in their movies, in their whatever, because of backwards international markets like China, and I'm fairly secure in saying somewhere like Saudi Arabia, are cowards.
Also Russia.
And Russia,
yeah,
are cowards. Plain and simple. Especially Disney. Yeah. Disney are the worst for this.
Well, Disney's got a whole bunch of problems.
I mean, Disney is problematic in a whole bunch of ways.
Oh boy, everybody! Today we're gonna pretend that everybody's welcome.
I mean, it really says something that Alex Hirsch, the creator of Gravity Falls, has spoken at length about this, about how he wanted the two policemen in Gravity Falls to be shown to be in a gay relationship, and Disney wouldn't let him. And is, I'm going to be honest, exceedingly bitter about it. And I don't blame him, because he is still talking about it however many years later. And
when it's your intellectual property, and then they come down and they say, no, you can't do what you want, because it's just bullshit.
I mean, remarkably, in fairness to Disney, they do seem to be getting better about it. For sure, Owl House is going to be one of those shows that is really going to
make or break it.
Yeah, potentially be a trailblazer. I'm fairly sure I've read something somewhere that Dana Terrace is fairly sure that she'll be allowed to do a proper relationship between Luce and Amity, but obviously, we'll just have to see.
The thing that concerns me about Disney is they very much use the what do they call it? It's like they like the same tactics corporates use.
Oh yes, no,
Like
they
the gender, the queer pimping.
yeah,
You know, where
they
they say that this is going to be the case, and they say that this is going to be happening, but then the way that they implement is offensive,
absolutely,
and
absolutely,
and
Yeah.
absolutely. They are progressive when it suits them, and when it
and
doesn't
that in
suit
and of
them,
itself is kind of problematic.
oh, absolutely, because
So
it shows that it's not real support. They aren't supporting because they believe in the cause. They're supporting because it will get them more money.
Yep, that is it at the end of the day. Oh yeah, no, Nick and Cartoon Network are absolutely kicking Disney's ass in the representation department.
oh yeah, Cartoon Network's amazing. I mean,
Also, some Netflix stuff has also been really good with the representation, like She-Ra and Kipo have
Mm-hmm.
both been really good examples
I've
in terms
been
of the
really
animation.
I've been really impressed with She-Ra
Mm.
as a show.
It's
It is
good.
shockingly well written.
Huh? It's so good.
But no, I was thinking like Steven Universe.
Mm.
Steven Universe is also.
You know,
I have to watch the rest of that. I'm still like only midway through it.
Mm-hmm.
very, very, very interesting in how they handle things, and it's very cool. I love Steven Universe.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Steven Universe also is one of those has a bit of a weird example. I believe the trope name for it is discount lesbians or something, where basically there's beings who don't follow like the definitions of gender as we know them,
Mm.
or but are presented as a specific gender and are in relationships with one another. Even
yeah,
uh,
it's
Apparently,
yeah, yeah.
apparently, Mass Effect is guilty of this, considering the quote on the TV tropes page for discount lesbians is, "Why is lesbian sex only okay if it involves another species?"
oh yeah,
Yes.
the Asari.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing about the they're a monogendered race. So the thing with them is that like, but they're a monogendered race, but they all present as female.
Mm-hmm.
So any ship between two members of that race is by definition a same-sex relationship, but that's also just how they've been reproducing for the past entire history of their species.
Yeah.
Well, and
So,
what's
but
interesting is
same-sex members of other species in relationships with them would are still queer by definition because they express attraction to someone whom they perceive as female. And there are gay characters in the setting, gay men in the setting who do not express attraction to them. So it seems to be, at least from what I've read and seen, that fuck, I am not getting the words right for this. Bottom
that's
line is complicated.
yeah. The Asari is if when you get into the coding of the Asari and the way that's set up, it gets a little weird because the Asari are by definition like an all-female race, and so then any relationship between them is considered a lesbian relationship.
Mm-hmm.
However, based on what you learn from Liara in uh, Mass Effect, the Asari pureblood relationships are generally looked down on.
Mm.
Yeah, that gets elaborated further upon in the second game, I think. Yeah, it does. But there may be reasons for that beyond just it being a same-sex relationship that have more to do with like what's the word for it? A greater occurrence of genetic defects between that come from Asari relationships
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to Asari relationships with members of other species.
Oh, and I am sure that that's, definitely part of it and everything, but it's like I said, it's when you get into the coding, it is where it starts getting a little weird because like you're saying that
It's
the
weird, yeah.
best kind of relationships are the ones with people who are not like you.
Yeah, no,
And
it's odd.
so it's sci-fi in general though it gets a little bit weird.
Sci-fi and fantasy can get really high and conceptual with this stuff, and it adds a whole different dimension that we can't really perfectly quantify because it is speculative in its nature.
Also, if you're looking for a deeper conversation about coding, end of the month we will be discussing queer baiting versus queer coding. So, look forward to that.
That's what I was looking for earlier. Queer baiting. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, queer baiting is a whole different thing from what we were just discussing, though.
Yeah. No, when I was talking about Disney and the
yeah,
and how they treat representation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So.
Anyways,
do we want to go more into
asexuality?
Yes. Yeah, we can go back to asexuality then. I mean, we were mentioning One Piece earlier. It is
Luffy is pretty clearly asexual to some degree. We don't know how asexual he is, but we know that he's not real. He doesn't really have much of a sex drive, if any.
Oda has said that Luffy is only attracted to adventure and possibly food,
which tracks 100% with Luffy. But yeah, having the main character of a huge shonen series be basically canonically asexual is a pretty big deal.
Absolutely.
That's not the shippers, though.
Shippers are their own. They are their own can of worms.
You are correct.
I mean, it's not just Luffy. There is very much a case to be made that Zoro is also asexual.
Because Zoro, at the very least, is very firmly celibate during the time of the story. Yeah, I think actually all three of the Romance Dawn trio show basically no interest in romance or sex during the course of the story.
Which might actually say more about the author than anything.
No, there are romances during the story. It's just they're usually either very brief or in the backstory or played off as gags. There's not really a lot of actual on-page romance in the series.
Yeah, as much as this
my point does not fall apart by that statement. You know that, right?
Yeah. That just makes it better.
We the audience are relatively sure that Oda just doesn't want to write a main character romance because he's not confident about his romance writing skills, but again, that does not rule out your theory either.
Yeah. Well, Oda is married with 2 daughters, so
I have 2 daughters. I'm going through a divorce.
Okay,
so that's not exactly a defining factor.
Fair enough.
That's why I said that. Generally speaking, that's where you kind of get into the coding of it, is because coding's a lot more subliminal.
We really don't know enough about Oda's personal life to really say.
Right, and when you don't know enough about it, all you can look at like the influences that they bring to the table. So.
Yeah. Regardless, there are a lot of authors who have of Japanese media who have made a lot of good queer representation. I believe you could also argue that another protagonist in a Shonen Jump property is asexual. Senku from Dr. Stone.
Yeah. Senku has shown no inclination towards, anyone, other than their use in his scientific experiments.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Senku is science sexual.
But again, it's whether these things get revealed in story is the big thing, and obviously, part of it could be that these authors are not sure how to do it sort of naturally. But some anvils need to be dropped is a trope for a reason.
Yep. But yeah, I think of other asexual representation that's done pretty well. What was it? A lot of representations of the Greek goddess Artemis portray her as asexual, which works really well for her, I think, because the whole vow of celibacy thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's because, Artemis is like, it depends on which version of Artemis you're looking at, but I think Artemis is usually perceived as asexual, and Apollo as, hopelessly gay.
Apollo is pretty firmly, I think, bisexual or pansexual in every interpretation I've seen of him, at least.
Yeah.
Which very clearly tracks with him and his mythological portrayals. It's kind of weird how in Greek and not weird, but it's kind of fascinating how Greek and Roman culture bisexuality was much more of the norm than it is in modern Western society, where heterosexuality is more the norm.
You can blame Christianity for that one.
Hooray,
100%.
Hooray, Christianity!
You screwed up the world multiple times.
And let's be honest. If God does exist, I'm not even blaming God for this one. This is the men that created Christianity's fault and wrote the Bible.
Yeah.
And then translated the Bible multiple times through multiple languages. This is on them. I am 100%. I am 99% sure that should God exist, they do not give a shit, because I doubt God has any sense of gender.
Well, it's really funny. The standard Christian view of God is that he transcends gender, or it transcends gender. So,
yeah,
it's easier just to call God like stuff such as the Lord Almighty and such like that.
But I am 99% sure they don't give a shit who people have sex with or who they are attracted with, as long as they're a good person.
Yeah, no, that is basically New Testament in a nutshell.
It is ironic, Marker Blue. It is ironic. It is depressingly ironic, but it is ironic. But
there are a lot of words that could be had about this, but we should really move on to just.
I would be happy
back to talking about representation and trope usage.
I would be happy to rant about how hypocritical Christianity and pretty much most religions are. But yes, so you mentioned bisexuality. That's again another sexuality that doesn't get that much representation. I remember I was walking with a friend of mine and basically challenged him to come up with 5 bi characters off the top of his head. He struggled to even come up with 2.
Let's see. We got Loki in many of his different variations. We have. You're right. It's hard.
Shallan in Stormlight Archive is canonically bisexual.
Shallan is bi.
The one that I always remember is Kate from Dodgeball.
She's great.
And if you get into some series like The Wheel of Time is full of bisexual people.
Yeah. Then there's the characters who are probably bi.
But bisexual is kind of one of those, and I feel really bad for bisexual people in this regard, because bisexual is one of those sexualities that's kind of like asexuality, and it's just kind of erased. People seem to think that it just...
bisexual erasure is a really unfortunate thing. And,
a really bad thing.
Well, the thing that people don't realize about bisexuality is it's very much a spectrum, like asexuality, in that it is not just a 50-50 attraction to men and women. It is, you can be mostly attracted to men but have an attraction to women as well, or the other way around, or anywhere in between. And that's...
Yeah, I mean, the Kinsey scale's been a thing forever.
Mm-hmm. And it's just something that is very rarely portrayed. I mean, that reminds me, Kinsey scale is, I believe, where is it? Is a trope.
Yeah, I mean, and I know it's not great, but it's like just the fact that that knowledge has been around for like very, very long time.
Mm.
Yeah, no, and there's this unfortunate trend in media to portray like sexuality as a switch between straight and gay, with no in between whatsoever.
Yeah.
Whereas when the truth is, like, there is a whole spectrum between straight and gay people, and people just don't acknowledge that for some fucking reason. Like, 1 in 50 people in the U.S. is bisexual, statistically speaking.
My best friend is bisexual.
I'm pretty sure there are people who are bisexual who are possibly on this podcast.
I honestly do not know what the fuck I am, but I like looking at pretty men and I like looking at pretty women.
And there is nothing wrong with that.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Frankly, I have no idea what the fuck to label myself at this stage in my life, so I'm just gonna not label myself.
That's when you just say you're queer.
Fair.
Yeah.
That is literally what the queer label is for.
Yeah.
It's for people who don't know how to define themselves, 100%. Or who don't have a label that exists for them.
Which is, I think, one of the best features of the LGBTQIA plus community.
The flexibility?
Is the existence of that label. The fact that it's just that it's, that they make a point of saying that there is this one label that is all inclusive, that no matter what way you feel different or that you can't define, you fit into our circle.
Yeah. And again, that is the issue with some people who, for some reason, forget that the point of being LGBTQ plus is to be accepting of anyone, regardless of their sexuality, of their gender, of their desire for a romantic relationship, whatever. Which is why organizations like the one I mentioned near the start of the stream are so god-awfully frustrating. But another of the... Well, let's be truly honest. At this point in time, society is generally okay. Well, parts of society are generally okay with the portrayal of lesbians and gay men in their media. We've discussed...
Go ahead, sorry.
I mean, we've discussed, obviously, bisexuality and the fact that very much there is a... There is a void.
There's two very good examples of that, of bisexuality, who were recently canonized as a couple in an adaptation of the source material, Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy.
But we have... No, go ahead.
Like, the funny thing is with those two is that they were originally intended to be a pretty explicit queer couple when they first started interacting in the 90s Batman cartoon, but they had to sneak that past the radar.
I mean, what does it say that the queer-coded characters are the villains?
Well, they're the more sympathetic villains.
They are, well, Poison Ivy, I would say, is more sympathetic. Certainly nowadays, Harley is more sympathetic. I'm willing to bet that wasn't the case when she first started. Really?
She was always like the more comedic, unfortunately abused sidekick to the Joker.
Fair enough. Then again, it's hard to be worse than the Joker.
The Joker is quite probably the most depraved villain in Batman's rogues gallery, besides maybe Mr. Zsasz.
I would wager that the Joker's probably one of the most depraved villains in media.
He's not more depraved than the Red Skull, though, because he might be a monster, but he's an American monster.
He's not a Nazi. And he's
I
not
love
willing
that
to
that's our bar.
He's not willing to work with
bar.
Nazis.
He's not a Nazi.
Unfortunately, that is the bar nowadays. Still the bar nowadays. But yes, we've discussed bisexuality, we've discussed transgenderism, we've just discussed asexuality and aromanticism.
We haven't about the L's and the G's.
Well, no, I was going to say let's discuss the I's. Intersex people.
Oh. Intersex representation is actually very uncommon.
It is uncommon, but I have had two experiences.
It is a very rare thing.
It is, but I have had two portrayals of it that I think were very good. The first that I'm mentioning is Astro Lost in Space with the character Luca.
Luca's great.
Again, it got brought up, it got treated respectfully, and it wasn't the entirety of Luca's character. And that's, again, it's a low bar, but it's a bar that they passed, and I'm quite glad about it.
I mean, the fact that our bar for representation is that it's not the sole aspect of their character is kind of depressing.
I know. But
shape up, people.
But unfortunately, yeah, at this stage, that is definitely a bar that is still around, and it is always a good thing when that bar has been surpassed.
I mean, the bar is the floor, and in some ways, and it really should not be hard to clear that bar.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, our criteria for not the worst person is that they are not as Nazi.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah.
Yeah. That's not a high bar.
Mm-hmm.
It's really not.
I'm just finding the name of the episode in question so that I can make sure that I get the explanation right. So in House, in season 5, there is a teenage patient who... Okay, I'm not sure, again, because of the fact that intersex is not portrayed that often, I am not sure of my information about it. I could Google that, but obviously there would be an asterisk there of don't listen to me, it's probably best if you do your research yourself, because I'm some idiot on the internet who may not know what he is talking about.
I mean, and isn't that kind of like the ultimate message for all of this? Is like, don't be afraid to do your research.
Yeah.
You know, like if you want to know more about the LGBTQIA plus community, then ask us. Don't. It's like I was talking to someone the other day, and they said that they were afraid to ask people's pronouns because they didn't want to offend anybody, and it's like we like that. We like it when you ask what our pronouns are because it shows that you're considerate and that you care about how we feel.
You do care.
If you have questions, ask.
Mm-hmm.
There are very much worse things than asking.
Yeah.
Like stumbling ass backwards into an awkward situation because you didn't know what the fuck you were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Or, worst case, looking in exactly the wrong places for information.
Mm-hmm.
Don't use J.K. Rowling as your source.
Don't use
No.
J.K. Rowling, and don't use those weird pamphlets from those you know the groups. You know exactly the groups I'm talking about.
Like PragerU.
Oh,
Don't use
hell.
PragerU as a source of information for anything but the shittiness of conservatives. But yes, in house there was a teenage patient who has genetic mosaicism, I believe is how you pronounce it, both male and female DNA, and ambiguous sexual organs, which, again, based on my very limited research via Wikipedia,
there are various intersex conditions, including XXY, if that's what you're talking about.
Yes, but very much it was the patient themselves presented as male, but also presents as male, but that was more forced upon them by their parents, and that actually sort of results in the issues of the episode, because they came into the hospital with a fairly simple case of dehydration that is then what's the word I'm looking for? Made worse. I'm just going to go with made worse. Exacerbated. That's the word I was looking for. That was the fancy word I was looking for. Exacerbated by the parents believing that it was something to do with their genetic mosaicism. And again, it's a very interesting episode in that Jackson, the patient, again, as I said, presents as male, believes themselves to be male, but also, likes to do things that are more generally considered female, which again is, bullshit. Like whatever the fuck you like. But
so, to explain what intersex is, intersex is basically it's not quite the same as non-binary. Intersex is more of a biological thing brought about by genetic or hormonal conditions that cause a person to have organs
ambiguous
or secondary
sexual characteristics.
Sexual characteristics that are associated with multiple genders. So you have people who it's something that you should definitely look up and research for yourself, because there are a lot of different intersex conditions, but it comes from a more biological place than say non-binary and other trans identities, because those are more coming from a person acknowledging and learning about who they are rather than having a biological condition.
Right, and intersex people, and the trans people, we have a lot of work to do on a broad term. It's like, because transgenderism is all about your identity not matching the sex that you're assigned at birth. And a lot of the steps that we take is to bring our bodies physically into alignment with how we perceive ourselves. Intersex people might be binary. They might see themselves as more male or more female. They might be non-binary, meaning they don't really see themselves as either, or they see themselves as both. But where intersex and transgenderism kind of get gray is that intersex often deals with, like you said, those biological conditions, and there are I know the conservatives love to use the whole sex is, either XX or XY, but there is a whole slew of things that can be going on with a person's body. that they may not even be aware of. You could be biologically male, but genetically female. I mean, like have the DNA and chromosomes of a genetic female, and because of when testosterone released in your body or whatever, you develop male characteristics. I mean, it's such a complicated issue that there's not really a defining term.
The easiest way I can sum it up is some intersex people are trans, but trans people are not necessarily intersex.
Exactly. It's
a square rectangle.
Yeah, the square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not necessarily a square. That's kind of the relationship transgenderism and intersex has.
But yeah, did you need to continue elaborating, Mill? Sorry if we interrupted you.
No, it's absolutely fine. I mean, yeah, it's as I said, it's just an interesting episode because Jackson, presents as male, but likes dance and is attracted to other boys, and certainly, and while the parents are terrified of this because they believe it's something to do with Jackson's genetic condition, the doctor's absolutely fine with it, and I'm just like, do what you like to do, like who you like. Don't sort of put yourself into a box because other people believe you should be there.
Life is too short to spend your life miserable.
Yeah.
House is a total asshole, but at least he's not a bigot. At least he knows.
He is very much not a bigot, no.
There's that awesome bar there.
Again, it's sad that it is the bar that we are working with at the moment, but we're probably going to have to give it another decade until it's not a bar.
This is true.
At least.
This is so true.
I hate how slow society works, but there's not a lot that we can do other than try and move it forwards.
Improvement is improvement, and having improvement at all is at least a step in the right direction.
I'm just glad that we've gotten past the point where when there's a homosexual character that they are a villain.
Oh, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the queer-coded villains, because that is a trope that has been around for a long-ass time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, on that same subject, Wizards of the Coast just recently announced that they are rebranding the Drow.
Oh.
Yeah, instead of making them an entirely evil female-dominated race, they are now revealing that there have been other factions of Drow on the surface, and that the Drow that we've been familiar with were the the odd ones, the ones that became isolated and self-exclusionary. Which I think is really interesting that they have come out and made that public. They've announced like 3 different Drow factions that have absolutely nothing to do with the Drow that we've been raised with in Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
So,
the character...
The examples for queer-coded villains that come to mind are Disney Renaissance villains, in my opinion.
Well, the one I was going to mention was... what's his name? General Blue from Dragon Ball?
Oh, fuck. Dragon Ball's only canonically gay character is a villain and possible pedophile.
Mm-hmm. Oh, don't get us started on all gays are pedophiles trope.
Jeez, that's a trope.
Yeah. Fuck you, conservatives.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
That's it in a nutshell, isn't it? That's really what it is.
Herbert from Family Guy. This is one of the incidents where South Park actually, I would say, got it right. in the episode.
Oh yeah, the map episode.
Well, no, in the episode where Big Gay Al is fired from the Scouts because of his sexuality and replaced by a heterosexual man who actually does molest boys.
Wow. I 100% thought you were talking about the Nambla episode.
Oh, the Nambla episode is also, you know... Look, South Park does hit. It hits more often than, you know, your average Seth MacFarlane cartoon. It's just, as we mentioned earlier...
a lot.
As we mentioned earlier, because it treats everything with irreverence, it does mean that it misses.
Mm-hmm. Which often leads to weird stuff like Satan being in a gay abusive relationship with Saddam Hussein.
That's just wrong.
Yes, that canonically happens in South Park.
Yeah.
No, I am not making.
Well, I mean, you also have to be topical, so that's, you know.
Moral of the story is, if you are going to write a satire piece, don't make your villains marginalized people.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that means people of color. That means people who, you know, on the LGBTQIA community. That means, you know, people who have been targeted by cis, white, het culture. Don't make them your villains.
Make Wasp your villain all day, though.
Talking to you, Ricky Gervais.
He's a brave little cis boy.
Uh-huh. But yeah, God. so queer-coded villains. Who else have we got?
So we got Scar in Hades and Ursula from the Disney Renaissance cartoons are the most obvious ones I can think of.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Ursula was straight up modeled off of a drag queen.
Okay, I've just gone on Pride.com's 10 queer-coded gay villains from your childhood, and literally the second entry is actually almost every Disney villain.
That's about right, actually.
That tracks. Like, the only ones I can think of from in recent memory who aren't even slightly gay-coded are Gaston, who is aggressively heterosexual, and Frollo, who is creepily heterosexual.
But yeah, the options they give are Tamatoa, Scar, Maleficent, Prince John, Radigan, Hades, Captain Hook, Ratcliffe.
Oh, Jafar, definitely.
And Jafar. Interestingly enough, Orochimaru from Naruto is on this list.
Yeah. Orochimaru is the only canonically queer character in Naruto, who and I think it's non-binary. I think is what Orochimaru is defined as. Which great job, Kishimoto. Good on ya.
I mean, let's be real. Kishimoto couldn't even handle writing female characters, let alone trans or non-binary characters.
Oh, yeah. No.
Can we just modify that to say Kishimoto couldn't handle writing any character, and that's why every character ends up the exact same?
That's a very good point.
I mean...
That's a very good point. Kishimoto's just kind of shit.
Kishimoto's not a great author.
The other anime character on this list is James from Team Rocket.
See, I can accept James because James is largely...
ineffective.
Largely ineffective as a villain, but also played as a sympathetic character.
Yeah, I was gonna say James isn't really.
He
does fill an antagonistic role, but he's not really a villain. You know, he's very. Team Rocket themselves is, you know, Jesse and James are both kind of.
They're oddly sympathetic.
Sympathetic, yeah.
Well, Jesse's
Jesse's completely queer-coded.
Yeah, when you're a kid, like when you watch Team Rocket blasting off again, you find it funny, but as you get older, you do just start to feel sorry for Team Rocket, and every
so
single
true.
time they blast off again.
I just want them to win once or twice. It'd be nice, just throw them a bone, let them win every once in a while. You know?
I mean, it's the Dick Dastardly thing of, yes, they're the villain, but they work so hard, and you just want to see them
so
get a little
entertaining.
bit of a win. Let's... Oh, God.
But yeah,
So many of the... I googled queer-coded villains, and so many of the things that are coming up are... Wait a second, are all Disney villains gay?
Of course, it also has to come to mind exactly how many things at this point we're associating with queer. It's like, wait, how hyper straight do you need to be to not be queer coded? Because you realize that's what they're doing, you know? Just so many things have been given that label.
I believe the earliest example of a queer coded villain, in a film at least, to my knowledge, is the villain of the Maltese Falcon. I could be wrong though.
Well, I heard someone talk about how that was just like a big veiled gay story anyway, but I'd need to ask the guy about that one.
Yeah, I haven't seen the Maltese Falcon, so I wouldn't know personally.
There are definitely
let's talk about Silence of the Lambs.
Oh God, do we really have to talk about?
It puts the lotion on its skin.
Oh God.
Yep. Queer-coded villain.
Buffalo. I'm pretty sure Buffalo Bill is, from my knowledge, is a gay man who has deluded himself into thinking he is transgendered. I believe is what Hannibal Lecter's diagnosis of him is, anyways. Then again, I don't really trust the word of a serial killer 100%, so...
Well, that, you have that, and then you also have the whole, just that's what people think trans women are.
Yeah.
That like we keep circling around to the same topics and everything. It's like there's reasons why this is a problem, and people need to get over their victimization. Because newsflash, if you are white, Christian, male, you are not a victim.
I would also expand that to include upper class and what's the term? Neurotypical.
Yeah, well.
Well, I mean, you could put, any disability in the whole, you're done category.
Yeah. But yeah, basically white, neurotypical, able-bodied, straight cis men. In a nutshell.
Yeah. But,
You're probably not a disadvantaged minority if you're that kind of person.
It's like...
Just gonna be real with you.
And that's what I think is so funny about all of this, because Dungeons & Dragons, Wizards of the Coast seems to be trying to make strides in modernizing and becoming more inclusive thanks to things like Critical Role. And I think it is so funny, the traditionalist movement that has popped up because of it. Because they're like...
Traditionalists have always been weird to me.
It's like, what is wrong with being more inclusive and welcoming to people?
Nothing.
But yeah, just going back to people not knowing what transgenderism actually is. J.K. Rowling, in her detective series, clearly has no fucking clue.
Oh no! Robert Galbraith was a guy that actually practiced conversion therapy and was a big proponent of it.
Well, that's just the pen name, but in multiple of those books, I'm fairly sure the at least maybe not the overall villain, but one of the villains in it is certainly in one book that I remember reading the summary of, the villain was a man who dressed up as a woman to kill people.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
tracks with Rowling.
Yeah.
No, literally the inspiration for her main character and the person that character is based off of was a man who practiced pretty brutal conversion therapy.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't tell you anything about Rowling, I don't know how we're going to convince you. Because...
yeah. But I've managed to find the TV trope that is very similar to Queer Coded Villain, but they've got it down as sissy villain, or
I hate that term. I hate that term so much.
Yeah.
Mostly because here's the thing: if you're out there and you don't know any trans people, don't go, claiming that you know what trans people are like. Because when I came out, and I originally was looking for things to help me with my transition and my early transition, and just feel better about myself, I can't tell you the number of websites I had to go to and feel extremely dirty about myself, because the only places where I could find things that were geared towards trans women were fetish sites. And that's a huge problem, because like clothing market, if you want to find clothes that are actually supposed to fit your body type, if you're an older trans woman like me, then it's really problematic, because you either have to go and get larger women's clothes that don't fit quite right, or you have to go browsing on fetish sites for things that are engineered for the male body, because and that's a really uncomfortable experience.
One can only imagine. At least I can only imagine. I don't have that experience.
That's one of the reasons why I think LGBT people are so open about what we are, because we don't want people to have to experience these things,
Yeah. But yeah, I won't say the trope name again, because yes, it is bad, but it's basically the idea that the villain has effeminate traits.
Yes. Yeah, effeminate villain. We can call it.
So the big example that I remember from my own childhood, Pegasus in Yu-Gi-Oh.
Oh yes, Yugi boy. Funnily enough, he actually said a bunch of apparently, like, a lot of Pegasus dialogue got lost in translation, because he was supposed to be... He added... In his Japanese dialogue, he added a lot of Americanisms. Like, he called Yugi boy in Japanese.
Yeah.
As opposed to Yugi-kun, which would be the more Japanese word way to say it. Just a funny little fun fact. Sorry for the tangent.
It's fine.
Oh no, you're fine.
It's absolutely fine.
I feel like everything a lot of people I've asked about it, in like some of the people I've talked to who are members of the LGBT community, have said that they do like at least some instances of queer-coded villains, just because of how entertaining they are. But at the same time, like, there is also the unfortunate implications involved in having such a character being a villain, as opposed to being a more heroic character.
I mean, I would say the difference between a good use of it and a bad use of it is your queer-coded villain your only queer-coded character, and is that villain your only villain?
That's a really good way to put it, actually, because the problem in and of itself isn't having queer-coded villains. They exist. Bad people exist in all spectrums.
Again, the organization that we mentioned at the start of the stream.
You know, but it's when your only representation in your product is these queer-coded people.
Yeah,
it sends a very strong message.
Yeah, if you have like a 5-villain group and one of them is queer coded, and you have a 5-hero group and 2 of them are queer coded, that's less bad than having a few heroes and a singular villain who is very flamboyantly portrayed.
Yes.
It also takes some of it off, depending on if it's one of the puppy drowning villains, or where it's more like, well, the guy kind of has a point, and another one, and another one.
Yeah, having a queer-coded villain be more sympathetic is better than having them be a depraved monster. You know?
Yeah, I mean, if it's like, oh well, yeah, but the world they're in is kind of trash, so he's kind of right.
Which I think is kind of why Jesse and James get away with being more queer-coded than the rest of Team Rocket, because they are probably the most sympathetic members of the organization.
I don't think there's a probably about it.
Yeah, you're right. They are almost certainly the most sympathetic members of the organization.
To the point where sometimes they're actually more sympathetic than the main characters. I'm just going to come out and say it.
Not wrong. You're not wrong there.
Well, as a 20-something-year-old, it's very easy to get bitter towards Ash as the epitome of young guy who has 30 years experience.
He is perpetually 10, but he somehow has 20 years of experience as a trainer. It's kind of wild.
Yeah. So yeah, I think for the last sort of 25-ish minutes, we should get on to lesbian
the L's and the G's.
Yeah, the L's and the G's.
Yeah, and I'd like to start out by pointing out that there has been such inroads for LNG in media in the last 10-15 years. I mean, you look at the emergence of shows like RuPaul's Drag Race and how popular it has become, or the revitalization of the L word, and just the significance and popularity of shows like that. You look at how many intellectual properties have openly gay or lesbian characters front and center. Like I was thinking about Shadowhunters, which was a great show. I loved Shadowhunters.
I was thinking about She-Ra.
She-Ra is, and that's a show that's geared towards that's a show that's geared towards girls. I mean, that's not an adult that show is not made for adult audiences. That's made for kids.
It's aimed at a preteen audience, yeah.
And I think that's wonderful.
It's amazing.
You know,
at a preteen audience with an OWLW relationship as like the central focus of the show is kind of revolutionary, honestly.
And it helps that the show is so well written. Like a lot of care is put into not just the representation, but in the plot and the making the narrative coherent. And it is just I have very little bad things to say about that show. It's a very well done show, and when my daughter started watching that, I was shocked by how good it was.
Yeah,
it's so good. It's just so good.
I mean, another show that is slowly but steadily putting. Again, we'll have to see with season 2, but I have high hopes. Owl House.
The Owl House is also a very good example.
I mean, we were talking about bisexual characters a little earlier. We forgot to mention Luce, who
Yeah.
the creator Dana Terrace has said is bisexual.
Yep. And her primary interest in the show is a lesbian.
Mm.
And of course, the disaster on top of it.
Oh yeah, disaster.
Which is the best type.
Full on disaster
Ebony
lesbian.
is just
Yes.
a full-on disaster lesbian. Yeah.
You know, and it would be a mistake to not include. I know this isn't technically like a TV show, but I really have to put out props for Critical Role. You know,
Critical Role, I've heard, has
Because-
really great at representation,
especially
Campaign 2.
Campaign 2. Yeah, Campaign 2. I mean, you've got there's a lot of representation in there, and it is one thing that I just absolutely adore. And you know, I think it stands to the progress that we're making societally, as to the popularity of Campaign 2 over Campaign 1. You know,
I've heard a lot of good things about Campaign 1, but Campaign 2 has blown it out of the water in terms of like online popularity, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
so I just think it's wonderful.
But
Yeah.
the one thing I do want to mention is disaster lesbian or disaster gay or disaster bisexual is one of my favorite tropes in. Well, I mostly get it in fan fiction, but it's always nice to see it out in the official media wild.
It is.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I've
I'm
seen
a
the
fan of that
scale.
one. Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan just for, well, pretty obvious reasons. Yeah, representation of my sort.
Yeah, what was the axis? It was dignified, functional disaster, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, no, but the disaster character is always really fun to watch unfold. But seeing a steady rise in representation for gay and lesbian characters in media overall really has been really good. Like, hell, even in anime, there's been like a recent surge in partially yaoi, but mostly yuri manga and anime. It's mostly been on the manga side, but a lot of anime recently have been more upfront about having gay and lesbian characters.
I mean, yaoi is definitely getting there.
I think it's a bit behind Yuri, but it is.
It is unfortunate, and we should mention this. It is slightly unfortunate that that a lesbian relationship is seen that little bit more acceptable than a gay male relationship.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of gay male things seem to be written for let's just say the audience of younger girls who want to go yowie squee or something like that.
Fujos,
Yes.
yes.
That is very true. That is very true.
I mean, when I was originally looking at like gay anime, guess what? Basically, the biggest stuff out there was at the time.
Hentai.
I was gonna say.
You familiar with Studio Dean?
Oh God.
Oh God, indeed. It's like, yeah, this is not for my demographic.
Well, and part of the problem is like, this goes back to the whole coding issue. Is you look at a lot of that yaoi stuff. A lot of it is fan fiction or home written stuff by girls who are fetishizing gay men. And there is a lot of problematic behavior because it's written by people who are not necessarily mature enough to understand what a healthy relationship looks like.
There's also
so there's a lot of
inverse
things
of that.
Right, and there's a lot of the inverse of that. But there's a lot of things like idolization of romanticization of rape and forcing things, and it's very problematic.
Or like the dominant like guy who's like 45 and the other one's like coincidentally 18, and it's like and nervous. And it's like nope, no.
Yeah,
as a general rule, the 7+ rule for relationships is a generally good idea.
But let's be very clear. Let's be very clear. The romanticization of rape in any type of relationship is horrific.
Yes, and we do not support that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I swear, some of these people must have just misheard as divided by 7 plus 2.
Oh, yeah, no. Fuck that.
Divided by 2 plus 7.
Yes, just making it clear for everyone who wants to get to us. Like, no, as I said, that was for the example before, not any new examples. Wouldn't touch that.
I like the plus minus 10 rule.
That's a good rule for people who are about
if you are
30 or
older. If
Yeah.
you are when you hit 30 or older, it's like a plus minus 10 rule. You know, if you're 35 and you're with someone that's 25, fine. If you're 35 and you're with someone that's 45, fine. But if you're 35 and you're with someone that's like 60, that's a bit weird.
If you're 35 and with
That's
someone
at least
who's
to me.
18, that's also weird.
At least to me, I should caveat this and say that at least to me that's a bit weird, because I have met people who have a 20-year gap in their relationship and they are perfectly happy and by all appearances healthy.
I mean, what I will say is if you're a 30-year-old woman with a 30-year-old person who is in a relationship with somebody who is 60 or older, my first thought is, how much money does the person who is over 60 have? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, that is unfortunately the first place.
Again, not to say that they and happy relationship there is impossible, but that's going to be where my brain goes. It would be rude to ask, but I would have to think it.
And that's probably a failing on our part. But
I rarely see age gaps larger than like 7 years in a relationship.
Yeah.
Honestly, that work well. Like, my parents are 6 years apart, and they work out fine, but they also met when they both were in their 20s.
And when there's too much of an age gap, you start running into generational differences.
Yeah.
You know,
which
and
also
it's like
puts a strain on things.
And that can really put a strain on things, because, like, for example, Gen Y and Gen Z. Stop coming after us, Gen Z. Okay? Just stop it.
I am unfortunately on the borderline between the two, so
I am well entrenched into Gen Y.
I think I'm just about on the border of Gen Z. Just about.
You are an older Zoomer. I am a younger millennial.
And I'm at the edge of millennial. Oh god.
Yeah, Log, you and I are the older ones here.
I mean, it's
Mill's
not
the baby in this conversation.
Yay!
Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's like what I was going with this with Gen Z and Gen Y is Gen Y looks at things very differently from our Gen Z people on a lot of issues, because of the differences in our upbringing. You know, who our parents were and their generational values versus who Gen Z parents were and their generational values. You know, and so those things tend to clash if there's too much of an age gap. I think when you're closer to that border, you find a lot more in common. But when you're well entrenched within one of those, within different generations, that can cause some problems.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I mean, the one thing I will say with a lot of age gaps, I do find people who do those, oftentimes the fact that this is another generation is kind of the point, and that gets into a lot of issues.
Oh boy. Sounds like a fun time for everyone involved.
A trope that I think we sort of have to talk about is bury your gays.
Oh god, I knew this was going to come up. I hate this trope.
Why don't you talk about Supernatural, Jack?
So I
should have known we were going to go here. I should have known we were going to go here.
I have not watched Supernatural, I think, past season 8. But the internet had a meltdown last year as Supernatural was ending. Partially because the final stretch of its final season was happening during the absolutely chaotic as fuck presidential election. But so the week that the election was happening, we had the infamous gay confession from Castiel the Angel to one of the main characters, Dean. And immediately after confessing, Castiel gets sent to super hell, basically, because apparently he was under a contract that sent him to super hell if he had experienced just a moment of happiness.
So he didn't get sent to just hell. It was super hell.
He got sent to super hell for being gay.
Which is sad, because Castiel is like one of the best characters.
He is. He is. But yeah, no, he got sent to super hell for being gay. That's basically how the meme goes, and it's not entirely inaccurate.
There's the other thing that of the two brothers that are the main characters, the at the very least potentially bisexual one dies, and the straight one lives a happy life.
Well, the thing is, both of them die a whole fuckload of times. Like, they die a lot.
mean,
Dean
Dean
dies
died-
a lot more often than Sam does.
Dean died like 300 times in one episode, so...
But the one
yeah,
that
the
stuck,
timeless episodes.
but the one that stuck made him look like a bitch.
Yep.
Because he died
No,
to
no,
a piece
no,
of
you're-
rebar.
Oh yeah, no, that was the finale.
Mm-hmm.
He died. He got skewered by a rusty nail or some shit, and he died from tetanus.
Hooray
Which
for
is some
killing your
bullshit.
gays.
But yeah, there was actually controversy, I believe in 2016 or 2017. It was a few years back, where there were a couple shows on the CW that killed off prominent queer women. One was Arrow, which killed off the bisexual Sarah Lance, and its
Oh
season
yeah, I
premiere.
remember that one.
That pissed everyone the fuck off because Sarah was a popular character, so much so that they backpedaled and brought her back to life.
Mm-hmm.
The other one was killing off the lesbian Lexa on the 100 in a very abrupt fashion that a lot of people were also very furious about for understandable reasons. Because it
Fortunately,
happened right after she consummated her relationship with the female protagonist.
Fortunately, where the CW didn't misstep there was with Lexa. They didn't then have Clark go on to have a,
Straight
relationship with with a guy to say that, oh, this is the way it should be, and now she's going to be happy and everything. She pretty much never loved again.
Yeah, I don't think she had a strong romantic relationship after that at all.
No, she didn't, and that's.
I think she had maybe one or two flings afterwards, but that was it.
Yeah, she did. But they were actually lesbian, really. The one that I can think of, it was a lesbian relationship again, and a lot of her focus on after that was on her relationship with Bellamy, which was very platonic.
Yeah.
So.
That doesn't stop the shippers though, who freaked the fuck out over the final season.
Oh yeah.
That was fun to watch crash and burn.
I liked that show a lot. Like the final season, it ended a little weird, but I generally liked the final season a lot.
Oh, that's nice. I was more talking about the shipping fandom just caving in on itself.
Yes, yes.
That was fun to watch. But yeah, the 100 is. I do appreciate the representation that Clark brings to the table, but they did Lexa so dirty.
They did. Unfortunately, I think that had a lot more to do with her other show, the actress's schedules,
yeah,
and whatnot, than the writing, and they needed a way to get her out of the show. So unfortunately, I think she was more of a victim of that circumstance than actual bad writing.
Well, the bad writing played a part in how they wrote her out.
Yes. Absolutely.
Like, I do not for a second want to credit the writer for how they wrote her out, because there are a million ways they could have handled that better.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the last thing that I especially want to mention before we end is pansexual representation, because I think that's the only one we've really missed and haven't talked about even a little bit.
So why don't you explain what pansexuality is and how it differs from bisexuality?
Oh, do I?
I will be quiet on this one because I don't have a lot of experience.
I'm not 100% sure. My Again, this is my interpretation. I'm not going to say that I'm correct on this because I'm honestly not 100% sure. I believe it is attraction towards someone regardless of their gender identity. I think.
So, from what I've looked up, bisexuality is just very dualistic. It's attraction to men or women, and or women. Pansexuality is attraction to any sex or gender. So, it goes beyond just the binary of traditional,
Well,
traditionally held beliefs of gender.
my instinct with my instinct with the difference is that bisexuality is very much the gender identity is a part of the attraction, whereas pansexuality just it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, pansexuality is a lot broader than bisexuality. Pan is literally the prefix for all.
My favorite pansexuality meme was this person on there saying, "I'm pansexual. I don't see gender. I see a constellation of options."
Ooh, that's clever.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it, you know, you could draw analogs to like the gender spectrum, for example, where pansexual tends to be more like the gender fluid, you know, versus the bisexual being the non-binary group, because bisexual is much more related to the binary, I think, whereas pansexual is much more, it's fluid. It's anybody, as I understand it. Like I said, I am not very experienced with this. I'm a very binary person in both regards.
I don't think any of us have real experience with pansexuality, if we're being honest.
Again, so if do your own research, please.
If any of you know pansexuals out there, feel free to help us what we got wrong.
Yeah.
Of course.
I will also. There is one more thing we need to mention, and that's the ambiguously gay or bi characters.
Well, I wanted to get into a bit of a few pansexual characters, because there are some fairly
I know
popular ones. Because Deadpool is pansexual, yeah. Apparently, Lando Calrissian is
that does not surprise me in the
meant
slightest.
to be pansexual. Iron Bull in Dragon Age Inquisition.
That's correct. That is Iron Bull. Anyone can ride the bull.
You're gonna have to confirm this for me, Jack. But apparently, the character Jack from Mass Effect 2 was meant to be pansexual.
Yes, that was in development. She was. I think that got along to a late stage of development before it got quashed because of the fuss a bunch of moral guardians stirred up over Mass Effect 1 letting you romance a female alien as a female player character.
Wikipedia specifically names Fox News, which is unsurprising.
Yep.
out of all the news sites.
Here's another little tidbit for all of you out there. If you get your news from Fox News, you're part of the problem.
Yep.
A large part.
Captain Jack Harkness from Doctor Who, though I believe he is more omnisexual, which is different from pansexual. as far as I know.
We don't know how it's different, but
I'm
will
not even
find
going to
out
try and
hopefully.
attempt. I'm not even going to try and attempt to define omnisexual.
I think with Jack Harkness especially, you get into the whole issue of aliens and
Yeah.
the possibility of genders out there that don't fit into our human genders.
Yeah.
There's also the fact that Jack Harkness is from the future.
So.
So yeah.
I mean, that kind of always gets me wondering about like all the canonically bi characters, because just where I wonder if it's like bi character or if the author ended up putting him more as pan, not really knowing the difference, things like that. It's like characters being canonically in that area.
Oh, other bi characters would be all four main love interests in Dragon Age 2.
Yeah.
I believe they're all bi.
Yeah, as far as I know, yeah. Again, like, one of the better things that BioWare does is LGBTQ plus representation, because we didn't mention this when we were talking about transgender representation, but Krem from Dragon Age Inquisition is very good.
He's a trans man, yeah.
Yeah.
And he is very well done.
Yeah, but the last pansexual character I want to mention, in the comics, Loki.
Yeah, that is very much in line with Loki's mythological representation.
Mythologically as well, yeah. But what was it you wanted to mention, Jack?
The characters who are quote-unquote ambiguously gay or bisexual.
Yes.
Who, you have a reasonable assumption that they are some kind of LGBT or P, but you're not quite sure if they are, because it's never explicitly stated in the text.
And that's where you tend to get into the issue of
Coding.
wanting to draw in. Yeah, that's a coding issue, because you get into the issue of wanting to draw in that crowd, but also not really wanting to represent it.
Yeah. But on the ambiguously bi side of things, you've got Bob from Bob Burgers.
Oh, yeah.
There is very much an implication in at least one episode, I'm fairly sure, that he is bi. And from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Jake.
Oh, yeah, Jake has a lot of that.
But again, we missed an actually bi character in Rosa from Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Rosa!
So
we also did Captain Holt either for gay rep.
No, we haven't, and Captain Holt is a very good gay rep.
As for the ambiguous side, we have Azula and Ty Lee from Avatar. Don't know what the hell they have going on, but there's something going on there. God. It's just with ambiguous characters, it's hard to really pin it down, because you can never know how much of it was accidental and how much was deliberate subtext.
Yeah. Especially on the ambiguously gay side.
Yeah. Some of it might just have been accidental, like usage of traits that later became associated with homosexuality.
Well, I mean, you have, for example, go back to Stormlight Archive here, Shallan is, canonically bisexual, but that canon emerged because she was so heavily coded bisexual that Brandon was like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like, hey Brandon, does Shallan have a crush on Yasna? Because it sounds like she has a crush on Jasna. It's like, you know what? She did have a crush on Jasna. She's bi.
Yeah, and so that's I think that's the issue of like an author not really understanding coding and not being fully willing to commit on something. You know, and
not willing to commit to it into the text, at least.
Right. Such as Dumbledore.
Snake.
Aerith, do you want to be along for the ride when we do our roast of Harry Potter at the end of July?
Oh, absolutely.
We're gonna have a huge audience of people just watching me tear Harry Potter to shreds for 2 hours.
You know
It
what?
might be longer, depending. Honestly, I'll bring the
Yes, have the trans women come on and help roast J.K. Rowling, the
Yeah.
enemy of all trans women. I am all on board for that.
Oh, that's perfect. That is beautiful.
31st of July is when it's currently scheduled.
I will make an effort to be there.
We decided
that
was a fun date because it was Harry's birthday.
Perfect.
Speaking of ambiguous characters, though, or going back to that,
Mm.
there's also Seahawk and Mermista from She-Ra.
Yep, those are definitely ambiguous.
They seem they are heavily bi-coded, and to the point where
I
I've
think
seen fandom posts calling them the king and queen of bisexuals.
I think Mermista's one of those that was originally supposed to be more
Explicitly
trans, because she reads very non-binary in the way it's written.
I'm pretty sure Perfuma is actually supposed to be trans. They never just
Perfuma is absolutely, but if there's a few things there's a few coding issues with Mermista as well.
That would make sense, yeah.
So
she does strike me as, at the very least, extremely tomboyish, if not non-binary coded.
So
but yeah, the thing with the ambiguously gay or bi or anything along those lines is there is that unspoken line of uncertainty between how much of it was intentional or not.
Speaking of ambiguous, I've just remembered, this is not an ambiguously gay or bi thing, but Najimi from Komi.
Oh yeah, no one knows what Najimi's gender is.
I'm not sure
And
the author
Najimi
has even decided.
I'm pretty sure Najimi just refuses to acknowledge to tell anyone their gender just to troll people.
Very possibly.
you know, that is a legitimate thing.
Yeah.
Some people just don't want their gender being called into question. You know, they don't want it to be a facet of who they are. That's totally
People generally
okay.
use they them pronouns for Najimi just because no one knows for certain what Najimi prefers.
It's not helped by the fact that Japanese is a very gender neutral language.
Oh yeah. Pro tip out there for any of you wanting to be respectful and not wanting to upset people. Most people will not take offense to being referred to as they them.
Yeah.
So if you don't know someone's pronouns, just refer to them as they them until they tell you their pronouns.
I was about to say the exact same thing. And that is generally what I try and do, is stick with they them until I've been told.
Otherwise, yes.
When I started at my job that I currently have, people did that for me, and I was actually very appreciative of it because it gave me the space to say, no, I use she, her, and I like to, that's how I like to be perceived, But it's just a matter of just be respectful, If it's someone you haven't met, just be respectful.
Yeah.
Always err on the side of caution in these cases.
And I think that's a good message to end today on. I hope everyone has enjoyed and gotten something out of listening to us talk about this, because it is important, and it's something that needs to be discussed more. The good tropes and the bad tropes. The good tropes, obviously, because we want more of them to happen, and the bad tropes because we want less of them to happen.
Exactly.
So, in terms of future streams, I believe we will probably be playing more Mass Effect. It's probably going to be Tuesday. I certainly haven't heard otherwise. We finally get to go on one of the first worlds. Hooray!
Have fun recruiting Liara.
We will. Thursday, we will either be playing more tabletop games, or we might start another Civ game. Not sure about that
Ooh,
yet.
that could be fun.
That might be what we replace D&D on Sundays with. We'll have to discuss that, actually.
Yeah, it depends on how Kaido's feeling.
And then next Saturday, as we have mentioned before, we will be discussing the Yuri series Bloom Into You, which is a big favourite of Jack and I's.
Yeah. I believe we're going to be having Lore on with us for that episode.
That is certainly the aim.
But anyways, thank you, Aerith and Longstar, for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
No, absolutely. Aerith, we're happy to have you anytime.
Well, my schedule is mostly open, except I work nights. So
Good to know. Thanks again.
As long as we're done by 9.
And thanks again, Logstar. Sorry, kept cutting you off.
No problem.
Yeah, that is all we have for you today. As always, please follow the Twitch channel, follow the Twitter, subscribe to the YouTube, and we will see you next time. Good night.
Later.
Night.
Night.